Picture yourself standing in front of a house that shouldn't exist, a place so drenched in fear that even silence feels like it's screaming. This is the story of a real home, where the walls whisper, the dolls move, and the night air itself carries something unholy. By the time we're done, you may never look at an empty house the same way again. Some houses are forgotten, left to rot, left to be swallowed by time. But this house refuses to be forgotten. It wants to be known. Every night at exactly 3:14 in the morning, something inside it screams. Not a voice, not an echo, not the sound of something alive. A scream with no source. A sound that shreds through the dark and burrows into the bones of anyone who dares to stay. Some say it comes from the attic. Some say it drips from the walls. Others swear it follows them long after they've left. The last owner, a woman named Violet Holloway, was found in that attic, her mouth frozen open, her hands clamped over her ears. But she had been gone for hours before anyone found her. So, if she was lifeless, then what is screaming? Some places don't let go, some places don't forgive, and some never stop calling. The Michaels family was looking for a fresh start, a new town, a quiet street, a house big enough to make them feel safe. When they found the listing, it seemed too good to be true. A home that should have been out of their price range, but somehow it wasn't. The ceilings were high, the rooms were large, and the backyard stretched farther than Sophie and Alex had ever seen. The children ran through the empty halls laughing, already calling out which rooms they wanted. But the realtor didn't laugh. He didn't smile. His voice was flat when he slid the papers across the table. And when Mr. Michaels asked the question every buyer asks, "Why is it so cheap?" the realtor only cleared his throat. "The market's unpredictable," he said. His fingers tightened around his pen. He didn't say anything else. The house was quiet, comfortable. A little too cold, maybe, but that was expected in an old place. The parents tucked Sophie and Alex into bed, told them the walls were thick, that they wouldn't hear a thing if the wind picked up outside. But at exactly 3:14, the wind didn't pick up. Something else did. A sound, low, distant, rising through the air vents. A groan that wasn't quite human, a sound that didn't belong in any house. In the dark, Mrs. Michaels blinked awake. She turned toward her husband. "Did you hear that?" But he was already facing the ceiling, eyes open, listening. A moment later, the sound faded. The house fell silent again. "Wind?" Mr. Michaels muttered. His voice was forced, tired. They both wanted to believe it, so they did. The second night, it was louder this time. No mistaking it, no ignoring it. A sound rolling through the vents, something between a growl and a voice trying to be human. Sophie woke up first. She sat up in bed, staring into the corner of her room. A doll sat there. She didn't remember putting it there. Didn't even remember unpacking it. Its face was pale, the glassy eyes looking just past her, just over her shoulder. She pulled the blankets up to her chin. In the hallway, the family dog started barking. But it wasn't his usual bark. Not the sound of a dog hearing the mailman or a rustle outside. This was frantic, desperate. And he wasn't barking at a window. He was barking at the attic door, scratching at it, whining, like something was on the other side. Something he could hear. Something the family couldn't. But soon they would. Sophie was never a quiet child. She talked to everyone. Her parents, her teachers, the neighbors. But now she had someone new to talk to. Her mother first heard it through the walls, a soft whispering, a conversation with someone who wasn't there. When she peeked into Sophie's room, she saw her sitting on the floor, her hands carefully brushing a doll's dress. "Who are you talking to, sweetie?" Sophie barely looked up. "Miss Violet." Her mother felt something cold move through her. "Miss Violet? Who's that?" Sophie smiled. That small, knowing smile children have when they understand something adults don't. "She lives here. She likes my dolls." Her mother swallowed hard. forcing herself to sound calm. "Where did you hear that name?" "She told me," Sophie whispered. Her mother didn't ask any more questions. She just backed out of the room, slowly, carefully. Later that night, she returned. She wanted to check on Sophie, convince herself that it was just an imaginary friend, just a phase. But when she opened the door, her breath caught in her throat. Sophie was fast asleep on the floor. Her dolls, all of them, were sitting upright in a perfect circle, and in the middle of them, curled up like a doll herself, was Sophie. Mrs. Michaels wanted to forget about it. She wanted to tell herself that Sophie was just playing a strange game, that none of this meant anything. But the house wouldn't let her. That night, she stepped into the bathroom, steam clinging to the walls from the shower she had just turned off. She wiped her hand across the mirror, clearing the fog. And that's when she saw them. Tiny handprints, scattered across the glass. Her pulse kicked against her ribs. Alex and Sophie had been in bed for hours. There was no way. She exhaled sharply, her fingers pressing into the towel she had wrapped around herself. She wiped the mirror again, harder this time, smearing the prints away. She turned, took a breath. When she looked back, the prints were there again. Only this time, there were more. So many that they covered the entire surface, and they were dripping. She stepped back, her hand shaking as she reached for the door, and then she heard it, soft, just behind her, a child's laugh. Sleep didn't come easy in the Michaels' house anymore. When Mrs. Michaels closed her eyes, she saw the dolls. When she blinked, she saw the handprints. And just as she started to drift off, just as her mind finally began to let go, she heard it. At first, it was a small sound like a whimper. Then it grew. It twisted. It turned into a scream. Not a normal scream, not a child's cry of fear. Something worse, something raw. She and her husband were out of bed before they even realized they were moving. They ran down the hall, threw open Alex's door, and froze. Alex was sitting up in bed, clawing at his skin. His small fingers dragged over his arms, his chest, his face, red lines rising in their wake. "Get it off!" he shrieked, his voice breaking. "Get it off! It's in my bed!" His mother grabbed him, pulled him into her arms, tried to hold him still. "There's nothing there," she gasped, rocking him, pressing his head against her chest. But Alex wouldn't stop shaking, wouldn't stop clawing. And then, in the corner of the room where the moonlight barely touched the shadows, a doll sat. One neither of them had ever seen before, and its glass eyes were wide open. They tried to sleep after that. Tried to convince themselves that Alex had been dreaming, that Sophie had been playing, that nothing was wrong. But every night, at exactly 3:14, the house reminded them. It started small. The walls would tremble. The air would shift. Then the scream would come. It started distant, somewhere in the vents, somewhere deep. But each night it moved. It slithered closer. First it rattled the windows. Then it pushed under the doors. Then it crawled through the walls. The Michaels didn't sleep anymore. They barely spoke. Because how do you talk about something like this? How do you explain a scream that doesn't come from a mouth? How do you explain the feeling that something else is inside? Something that's coming closer? They couldn't ignore it anymore. Mrs. Michaels sat at the kitchen table, fingers tangled in her hair. Mr. Michaels stood near the stairs, staring at the ceiling. And then, finally, he spoke. "We have to check the attic." She didn't want to. She wanted to say no, but she didn't, because they both knew something was wrong in this house. They climbed the steps together, each one creaking under their weight. The air thickened, grew heavy, pressing against their skin. Mr. Michaels pushed open the attic door. Dust swirled in the flashlight's beam. And then they saw it, a circle of dolls, still motionless. Their faces tilted upward, their glass eyes reflecting the light. In the center, a crib rotting, splintered, covered in a sheet stained black with something neither of them wanted to name, and carved into the floorboards, deep, jagged, as if scratched by fingernails. Violet. Mrs. Michaels gripped her husband's arm. "We need to go." They turned, and the crib moved. Not a lot, just enough to make the floor groan, just enough to make the dolls tilt forward as if listening, just enough to make the flashlight flicker. And then a sound, low, ragged, a breath, coming from inside the crib. Miss Michaels grabbed her husband's hand. They ran down the attic stairs, down the hall, and behind them, in the dark, something ran too. Mrs. Michaels couldn't do it anymore. She couldn't keep ignoring the sins, couldn't keep pretending it was just the wind, or the plumbing, or the tricks of a tired mind. She had to know. So she did what any mother would do. She searched, not the attic, not the basement, but the past. She sat in front of her laptop, her fingers shaking as she typed the address into the search bar. At first, nothing, just an old listing, a few pictures. But then, something deeper. An old article, faded, grainy, but the words were clear. The house had not always been a home. Before the walls held a family, before it was even a place to live, it was an orphanage, built in the late 1800s. She swallowed, scrolling through the page. At first, it had been a place of hope, a place for lost children to find shelter. But then, Miss Violet Holloway arrived. Miss Violet was not a kind woman. She was not warm, not gentle. She was strict. She was cruel. And she had ideas. Ideas about how to make children obedient. Ideas about how to make them silent. They called them experiments. The children, they called them something else. They called them punishments. She would keep them in the attic for hours, sometimes days. No light, no warmth, no sound, except the creak of the floorboards as she moved around them, whispering in the dark. The house had no record of adoptions, no happy endings, only children who entered and never left. The article didn't say what happened to them, but it did say what happened to the orphanage. It burned. Winter 1901. The flames started in the main hall. The fire spread fast, ripping through the walls, eating through the floors. The children ran. Some escaped, some didn't. The only part of the house left standing? The attic. As if the fire had avoided it. As if something inside refused to burn. The survivors spoke of screams. Screams that never faded. Screams that still echoed through the ruins long after the fire had gone cold. And when the house was rebuilt, those screams never left. Mrs. Michaels shut the laptop, her breath quick, her hands trembling. She needed to talk to her husband. She needed to... A sound, soft, behind her. She turned. Sophie stood in the doorway, clutching her doll against her chest. "Mommy?" Her voice was small, unsure. Mrs. Michaels forced herself to breathe. "Yes, sweetie." Sophie hesitated, then slowly held up the doll. "She wants to know why you're looking her up." Mrs. Michaels felt her pulse stop. "What?" Sophie blinked. "Miss Violet. She says you should stop." Her mother's eyes fell to the doll's face. The pale skin, the dark dress, the stitched mouth pulled into something that almost looked like a smile. And then she knew it was the same as the ones in the attic, the same as the ones arranged in a circle around that rotting crib, the same as the ones that shouldn't exist anymore. She grabbed Sophie's wrist, her voice shaking. "Where did you get that?" Sophie looked down at the doll, her fingers curling tight around its arms. "She's always been here." That night the house held its breath. The air sat heavy, stale. The Michaels stayed awake, sitting in the living room, waiting. 3:14. The house didn't shake this time. The walls didn't groan. Instead, the scream came all at once. Not one voice, not two. A choir of voices, crying, pleading, begging. Not from the attic, not from the walls. From everywhere. The house didn't just scream that night. It wept. And for the first time, it sounded like it wanted to be saved. Mrs. Michaels couldn't do this anymore. She couldn't pretend, couldn't sleep. She couldn't close her eyes without hearing them. The voice, the screams, they weren't in her head. They weren't imagined. They were real. And they were getting stronger. So she picked up the phone, and she called the only person she thought could help, a priest. His voice was calm, too calm, like he had heard these things before, like he had seen worse. "I'll be there soon," he said. And then the line went dead. No static, no sound, nothing but silence. Mrs. Michaels lowered the phone, and then she heard it from upstairs, from the attic. A voice, Sophie's voice. The door was open. It had never been open before. Mrs. Michaels didn't remember Sophie ever going near it, didn't remember letting her go near it. But when she stepped inside, there she was, sitting in the center of the floor, cradling something in her arms, a doll. Not like the others. This one was burned, the skin blackened, the dress singed, curling at the edges. It smelled like smoke, like something that should have turned to ash, but didn't. Miss Michaels swallowed hard. "Sophie, what are you doing up here?" Sophie didn't look up, didn't move. She just kept rocking, holding the doll close. "She's awake now," Sophie whispered. Miss Michaels took a step back. The floor groaned beneath her feet, and then the house roared. Father Daniel arrived just in time. The house was alive now. The walls shook. The air crackled. Something was moving inside, something that didn't want him there. The moment he stepped through the door, the lights flickered, a picture frame shattered against the wall. And then, a whisper. Not one voice, not two. A chorus, crawling through the air, sliding into their ears, dripping down their spines. "Get out!" Father Daniel didn't flinch, didn't move. He raised the cross in his hand, and he began. The moment he spoke the first words, the house reacted. The floor shook. The windows rattled. A cabinet door flew open, slamming so hard it cracked the wood. Something screeched from inside the walls, a sound that shouldn't exist, a sound that was not human. The priest's voice never wavered, but the house screamed. Objects hurled across the room. The table lifted off the floor. A chair shot backward, crashing into the wall. And then the doors slammed shut, trapping them inside, trapping them with it. Through the chaos, through the sound, Mrs. Michaels turned, and she saw her daughter, standing still, too still, her hands limp at her sides, her face blank, and her eyes, not wide with fear, not filled with confusion, just watching. And then she smiled, a smile that was wrong, too slow, too knowing, and then, in a voice that did not belong to her, in a voice that was not her own, Sophie whispered, "She's inside me now." The bulbs burst, glass rained down, and the house fell silent. No screams, no whispers, nothing. Only the sound of breathing. Only the darkness that swallowed them whole. The house was silent. For the first time in months, the walls did not shake. The air did not hum. The shadows did not move. It was over. Or at least, that's what they told themselves. The Michaels family packed what they could. They didn't look back. They didn't talk about what happened. Not to each other, not to anyone, because what could they say? Who would believe them? They left the house standing, untouched, forgotten, waiting. The house sat empty for a long time. No visitors, no buyers, no one willing to step inside until they did. A new family, a new beginning. They didn't ask questions. They didn't care about the past. They just saw the house. And so they moved in for them. And so they moved in, a father, a little girl, a mother, new faces, new voices, new things to be afraid of. New things to be afraid of. The little girl liked to explore. She ran her small hands along the walls, the stair rail, the dusty corners. Everything felt new to her. Everything felt safe until she found it. A small gap between the floorboard, a sliver of space just wide enough for her fingers to fit inside. She wiggled them through, pulled, and the wood lifted. Something was buried beneath it. Something small. Something waiting. She reached inside, felt the rough fabric, the cold, stiff shape. She pulled it out. It was a doll, charred, blackened, its dress crumbling at the edges, its face still. She smiled, brushed the dust from its arms, and held it close. That night, she placed it beside her bed, and she slept. The house had been quiet for so long, empty, forgotten, but not anymore. The clock ticked. The air shifted, the walls breathed, and then a scream, louder than before, longer, hungrier, and this time it didn't stop. Think about living in a quiet home where every creak in the floor, every gust of wind against the window feels like something watching. This is the true story of a family haunted by something unseen, something that lived in the attic and whispered to their children at night. By the end, you will question every sound in your own home. James and Emily Harper wanted a fresh start, a new home for their family. The old Victorian house stood on a quiet street. It was beautiful, but old, and its past was a mystery. With their children, Lucas and Mia, they walked through the front door, full of hope. The air smelled of dust and something else, something that had been waiting. The first night was normal, unpacking, laughter, and exhaustion. But once the house was quiet, Lucas, their 7-year-old, sat up in bed, listening. He heard it, soft, steady footsteps above his room. He whispered, "Mom, someone's up there." Emily, half asleep, mumbled, "It's just the house settling. Go to sleep." But Lucas couldn't relax. He held his blanket tight and stared at the ceiling, waiting for the sound to return. Morning came, and Emily forgot about it until James checked the attic. The hatch creaked open, letting out stale air. Dust floated in the dim light as he climbed up the wooden ladder, groaning under him. The attic was empty, except for one thing, a chair, small, old, placed in the center of the room, facing the hatch. James felt uneasy, like something was watching. A chill crawled up his spine as he stepped back. Downstairs, Emily called, "Everything okay?" James hesitated, then forced a chuckle. "Yeah, just some old furniture." But he knew that chair hadn't been there before. Night after night, the same sounds returned. At the same time, just past midnight, a slow scrape against the wood, a soft shuffle, whispers low and urgent. Mia noticed first. One afternoon, she sat at the table drawing. Emily leaned in. "What are you making, sweetheart?" Mia held up her paper. A shadowy figure, impossibly tall, stood in the attic. Emily forced a smile. "Who is that?" Mia answered right away. "The tall man. He says he lives up there." That night, James climbed into the attic with a flashlight. The air was thick, heavy. He moved slowly, dust swirling around him. A sound, rustling. He turned fast. Nothing. A deep breath. Then the chair rocked back and forth. James' heart pounded. He stepped back, breath quickening. Then the hatch slammed shut. Downstairs, Lucas shot up in bed, screaming. His small hands clutched his chest, his body shaking. Emily ran in, holding him close, trying to calm him. His voice trembled. "He's here!" Emily held him, heart racing, hands cold. The house had never been empty. Something had been waiting. The house grew colder. Shadows stretched where they shouldn't. The air felt wrong. Then came the laugh. One night, just as Emily and James were falling asleep, they heard it, a child's giggle from the attic. Emily sat up. "Mia! Lucas!" She hurried to their rooms. Both children were fast asleep. The next morning, objects had moved. A book left on the coffee table was now on the stairs. James' keys, always left on the counter, sat in the middle of the hallway. Small things, easy to explain until they weren't. One night, Emily woke to a noise outside their bedroom. A soft shuffle. She sat up, heart racing. In the hallway, a figure stood still in the dark, her breath caught. James! She blinked, and it was gone. James refused to ignore it anymore. He set up a baby monitor in the attic, hoping to catch something. That night, as they lay in bed, the small speaker crackled. Shuffling, then a whisper, "You shouldn't be here." Static, the sound cut off completely. The next morning, Mia sat at the table, drawing again. Emily's hands shook as she looked at the pictures. A dark figure loomed over their house. Another showed long fingers reaching from the attic hatch, the eyes hollow, empty. Emily whispered, "Mia, why do you keep drawing this?" Mia looked up and smiled. "Because he watches us." Emily's stomach turned. Something was in their home, and it wasn't leaving. James searched for answers. He combed through town records, newspaper archives, anything he could find. Days turned into nights of research. Then he found it. In the early 1900s, a boy went missing. The family searched for weeks. Then, without warning, the attic was bricked shut. No explanation. No body was ever found. The last owners never used the attic. They never spoke of it. But their son vanished, just like before. They left the house soon after. Lucas started sleepwalking. Every night, he wandered the halls whispering, "Let him in." Then, Mia's door locked by itself. James and Emily forced their way in. Mia sat on her bed, smiling. Her hands rested on her lap, her head tilted slightly, but her eyes empty. Emily turned, gasping. In the mirror, behind her, stood a tall, shadowy figure. James set up a camera in the attic. The next morning, they reviewed the footage. At the same time as always, just past midnight, the attic hatch creaked open. A dark shape rose from the shadows, tall, motionless, watching. For over an hour, it stood there, silent, waiting. Then, just before dawn, it melted back into the darkness. The house had kept its secret for years. Now, it was awake again, and it was watching. The house no longer felt like theirs. It belonged to something else now. James woke to a sharp, burning pain across his back, claw-like scratches, deep and fresh. Emily heard a sound from Mia's room, scratching, coming from inside the closet. She slowly opened the door. Nothing. As she turned away, the camera in the hallway caught it, a pale, elongated hand reaching down from the attic hatch. That was it. They had to leave. They grabbed their bags, hearts pounding, but when they turned, Lucas was gone. Then from above, his voice, "Come see." James hesitated, then climbed the ladder. Lucas stood in the attic, motionless. The chair rocked again. Slowly, Lucas turned his head, too far, too wrong, until his face was staring backward, his eyes black voids. He whispered, "He chose me." The lights flickered, the attic door slammed shut. Lucas's screams echoed, then turned into laughter, and the house stood silent again. By the time the police arrived, the house was silent. No screams, no sounds. Just the cold stillness of an empty home. The officers searched every room, every closet, every corner. No sign of Lucas. The attic hatch stood open, but inside, only dust and shadows. No chair, no footprints, as if nothing had ever been there. James and Emily were inconsolable. Days turned into weeks, but no trace of their son was ever found. Eventually, the attic hatch was bricked up once more. The house was listed for sale. Time moved on. The house sat empty for years, waiting. Then a new family arrived. A young couple with a little boy. They unpacked their belongings, their laughter echoing through the house. It felt warm, safe. One evening, as the mother tucked her son into bed, he smiled up at her. "Mom, I made a new friend." She brushed his hair back. "That's nice, sweetheart. Who is it?" His smile widened. "The tall man. He lives in the attic." The mother froze. Her skin prickled as the air seemed to grow heavier. "What did you say?" The boy giggled, pulling the blanket up to his chin. "He wants me to come see." A creak echoed through the ceiling above them. The mother turned toward the attic hatch, her breath caught in her throat. Then, A child's whisper, barely audible. Come, see. Some houses are simply abandoned. Others refuse to let go of those they take. If you ever hear footsteps above you at night, don't go looking. Some things don't want to be found.